Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. And yes, you need to be afraid. Be very, very afraid because that's what the WHO and the WEF are telling you to do. So you know that fear is a very powerful tool. And I also know that you, as my lovely Healthy American audience, you are onto all of these narratives and the hogwashing, as I call it. But because this is in the public eye, and there's all sorts of hoopla going on, social media, I just want to clarify what is going on with this so-called disease X. Now, I do want to share with you a headline here. I want you to see if you see what I see, what's wrong with this headline, among many things. So check it out. I am going right on over to the World Economic Forum. Yes, that is where the New World Disorder basically has its headquarters, and I like to call them WEFers because that's what they are, from the World Economic Forum. What do you see in this headline other than the flu mongering, the fear mongering? The World Health Organization is worried about disease X, and you should be too. What? March 15th, 2018? What in the non-spinning world? I know you like it when I say that. Friends, how many years ago was that? 2018. We are in 2024, and this disease X is making the rounds again. You know, they don't even try to hide it. They can't come up with a scary name or a number like BS 24/7. Isn't that the latest variation that's going around? So they just call it disease X. I want to share with you a couple of images about X. And before I do that, I want to remind you to please sign up for my free Substack, peggyhall.substack.com. Friends, YouTube is tightening the noose. Can I say that? Even more. Channels are going down. And if that ever happens, you can find me over at peggyhall.substack.com and also on my other channel, which is Living Swell with Peggy Hall. That's here on YouTube, where it's all about positive encouragement. You know, people really love their diseases, don't they? And next up is this disease X. And I'm going to share with you some of the notes that are coming out in my Substack for you tomorrow. So, you know what's weird before we dive into all of this disease X and the WEFers meeting in Switzerland at the Davos Forum? It's happening this week as we speak. Remember back in 2019? Oh, yes, the golden years when you could breathe freely and you didn't have to worry about having something stuck up your nose. You weren't being guilty of carrying an infectious disease. Well, actually, there's no law against being sick, so I still don't know how all of that kind of got into the public eye. Yes, you have a right to be sick if you want to, but remember back in the old days where you could go into a restaurant breathing oxygen. You didn't have to well, I never did, and I know you never did, but you saw people walking into a restaurant with the suffocation device, and as soon as they sat down, miraculously, the mystery pathogens didn't go to their table because they were sitting down. So back in 2019, when life was a little bit normal, there was something called Event 201. Let me know in a comment if you know what I'm talking about. And this actually came from our friends over at the Johns Hopkins University. Let's see, it was called the Center for Health Security. No, that doesn't sound communistic or fascist or anything. Totalitarian, nightmare. No. Center for Health Security sounds like they care about you. They care about your health and mine because don't you know, the government should be all up in your business about your health. Your personal health is the government's business. We've been over this many times. If you have a headache, I should take an aspirin. I mean, hello, it's common sense. So back in 2019, there was an event called Event 201. And yes, of course, it was sponsored by the World Economic Forum, the WEFers, and Granny Gates and Company. So it's just a coincidence, I'm sure, that this Event 21 was what's called a tabletop exercise. It was like an opportunity, a simulation, as they call it, to just imagine, because it would never happen, that there was a worldwide outbreak of an uncontrolled, I'm going to say it, coronavirus. I know, I feel strange saying that, but that is what Event 201 itself said. You read that right. You heard that right. Nothing like predictive programming or anything. So again, nothing to see here. Don't start connecting the clots with Granny Gates and WEFers. It was a complete coincidence that they were behind it. So by the way, these pandemic, did I say that word out loud? Exercises from Johns Hopkins go way back to 2001. Yes, and you know what happened in 2001, in September of 2001? Well, right before that, there was something called Dark Winter. Yes. And that was one of those exercises that imagined a smallpox outbreak set off by terrorists in shopping malls. Now, I'm sure it's absolutely a coincidence that a few months later, some other activity, event occurred, which we now call 9/11. And of course, do not question it. I don't want to hear any questions. I don't want you to start connecting the clots on that either. Of course, we know it happened exactly as the mainstream media merry-go-round told us it did. Do not ask questions. The government would never lie to us, friends, not about the spinning earth and certainly not about 9/11. So the reason I'm jogging your memory about event 201 back in 2019, and by the way, people that let me know if this happened to you, people that I sent that information to with evidence showing like this was known in advance, they brushed it off, literally saying it was a coincidence. So I believed him. Of course it was. I just want to make sure all the censors caught what I had to say. All right. So now in 2024, the WEFers are having their annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland, and they are going to talk about the predicted event of the dreaded disease X. Stay home, wash your hands, isolate, stand 6 feet apart, or is it 3 feet apart? Remember, we are alone together. Yeah, and we're in this together. No one was in it with me. And no, we were not in it all together. Okay. I actually think this is a little humorous and sad. It's like they don't have a name for the disease, so they'll just call it disease X. Now, this is where I want to share my screen because, X is the catch-all phrase, just like Twitter is now X and space X and Xbox and X Games. X marks the spot. I've done videos on this channel previously about X. By the way, if you cannot find my videos, they all live over at peggyhall.tv. That's the vault, thousands of videos that cannot remain on this channel. And many of them are not even on the backup BitChute and all that. So if that's where you want to see all the stuff for the last several years, including my personal appearances, Pastor David's sermons, all of that, my, Facebook lives, I have so much there that is censorship free. So that's kind of a walk down history lane if you want to go there. Anyway, many of my savvy, healthy Americans recognize the nefarious meanings and symbolism related to X. I find it interesting that they are calling this disease X. Here is Osiris, the Egyptian god of the underworld. And yes, you can see he has his hands crossed over his chest. So that is one of the symbols, if you want to take it that way. And of course, the X also means poison on a bottle. There are so many associations with this letter X that I've covered exhaustively, so I'm not going to do it in this video, but I'm going to show you a couple of interesting photos just with more X's. Yeah, see if you can make out those men or women. Well, I'm sure some of each, maybe both. I don't know, because I can't talk about that on this channel either. So we'll just call them he, she, thee, they, them, and them. And there they are with the X. Now, I'm sure it's absolutely a coincidence. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the disease X. I am actually not stating that, but you have to admit it's a strange position to pose in. Now, I know there are those of you that are going to tell me, Peggy, my sister is a photographer. She tells people the way to pose, and the celebrities just pose the way they want them to pose. Well, why do they want them to pose that way? Anyway, I find it weird, but let me go on. So this may have nothing at all to do with disease X. I just found it a little humorous. And I realize X is the symbol for the unknown, such as in algebraic equations. But here's what's interesting. At this WEF forum, they are preparing, and stick with me because I want to tell you what the US is doing as well. They are, the Davos and the WEFers are preparing a session devoted to discussing this disease X. And they're saying that they want to find out what efforts are needed to prepare healthcare systems for the multiple challenges ahead. Now, friends, I do have some good news for you, but before I bring you that good news, let me go back here because I have some more info that I want to share with you. And I'm going to share my screen. I know it's a little difficult to read when the screen is small, but this is the actual description in the program at the World Economic Forum annual meeting. And it says this session is linked to the Partnership for Health System Sustainability and Resilience and the Collaborative Surveillance, try to say that correctly, Surveillance Initiative of the World Economic Forum. Doesn't that just warm your heart that they want to surveil you even more? They want to track you and spy on you for your good. Friends, they wouldn't do it unless it was for something good and the good of all. So who's going to be speaking there? Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, and I'm sure that I pronounced that correctly. And of course, he is the Director General of the WHO, and then a few other interesting characters. Now, speaking of interesting characters, what I wanted to tell you is that this disease X, we're being told, could result in 20 times more fatalities than the current cooties. Let's just take that for what it's worth. Now, that is disturbing that they're putting that out there. And it's also sad. Sad for those who still live in fear, who still want to be told by the government and the WEF and Granny Gates that there are these mystery diseases out there that they should be very, very worried about. And I actually had a friend, emphasis on the word had. I had a friend, a lifelong friend, somebody I knew from the age of 5, who literally said to me, in 2020, one of the last things I ever heard, because the contact relationship is now broken, she literally said to me, "Thank God we have Dr. Fauci to tell us what to do." Isn't that such, just encouraging? Now, I know Dr. Fauci's not there to tell you what to do, but Granny Gates is, and Nasal Schwab from the WEF. So all of these wonderful world leaders get to tell you what to do. And, just a reminder, no one has a right to tell you what to do. No one, not even a policeman, all right? The only way your behavior can be restricted legally and legitimately is through legitimate laws. Only laws can restrict your behavior, not some edict from the governor, not some measure or requirement or policy from your boss or the clerk at Trader Joe's. No, and big N. Oh, all right. So what's even weirder is that back in 2018, the WEF was sounding the alarm for this disease X. So they certainly haven't made much headway, have they? So don't you love it when they tell you that you should be worried? I mean, they still haven't gotten very far. Now, here is from Johns Hopkins University. And remember, this was this start basically of medical education in the United States. And I will endeavor to bring you a video on that in the coming weeks or months about the hijacking of medical education and our medical system in general. But let's just say that Johns Hopkins University is kind of at the root. Can I say the root of all evil? I'm not sure if that will be allowed, but let's just say they're at the root of the fear and flu mongering. So let me explain by way of an image here. And here we have it. Disease X Medical Countermeasure Program at the Johns Hopkins University. There you have it, Center for Health Security. And look at this image that they have as well. How can we make medical countermeasures without knowing which disease will strike next? And that's why they call it Disease X. So again, the scary images and all of that. And I want to also share with you what's going on in our federal Congress related to Disease X and who is behind this. You might be surprised. All right. So Johns Hopkins says the next pandemic could occur any time. Infectious disease outbreaks occur 3 times more often than 40 years ago. I'm literally reading from that website. Just an aside to let the YouTubers know, the YouTube censors know. What's the most likely to cause the next threat? We don't know. But we do know, this is Johns Hopkins, we don't know, but we do know that there will be no immunity, no pre-existing immunity in the entire world's population. Isn't that amazing that they know that already? See, God made a mistake. I'm sorry to bring you the bad news, but God made a mistake. Obviously, he made a mistake with the genders. He made a mistake with your immune system. So there's all sorts of new diseases, don't you know, that now could affect you, and the design of your body by the creator, the God Almighty, the creator of the universe, couldn't see fit to create any mechanism whereby you could fight off the disease and illness. And don't you know that it's never, don't even think about the fact that your body might be detoxing or trying to rid itself of some imbalances. Oh, no, never, no. It's a disease that afflicts you and apparently in the entire world's population, according to the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Not very secure. And then they don't know what the disease is, but they do know, this I'm reading from their website, they do know that it is airborne. Of course, it's some spread via respiratory transmission. Of course, and it's silent. See, this is the other thing that these diseases are more clever than God. So these are transmissible by infected people who have no symptoms. You see, the thing where God went wrong, apparently, is he created something called symptoms. So if like your back hurts or your knee, or maybe you step on a piece of glass, like there's this mechanism called pain. And pain, for me, I mean, apparently it doesn't really exist with diseases, but pain is a signal like something's wrong. So maybe you have a headache, or, that would be like a symptom. Maybe your skin is itching and you have a rash, and like that would be, I don't know, what should we call it? A symptom. But apparently with this new threat that is identified by Johns Hopkins and the WEF and the WHO, that they don't know, they don't know what it is, and they don't know what it's called, and they don't know what caused it, but they do know that you could have it without symptoms and pass it along to somebody else. Do not question this. It's science. Now, they made 4 points, and the fourth point is this: it's harmful. And there is no existing therapeutics for it. You get it? It's deadly, except the good news is they're going to create a new cocktail. Yeah, it's already happening. They're creating a new cocktail in the UK for diseases that don't even exist. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it? And so thoughtful for us, we the people, that the government cares so much about our well-being that not only do they steal money out of our pocket on every paycheck, but then they print money out of thin air to go to develop these cures like in 100 days. Yeah, I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. So now that we've clarified that there's no humanity, no immunity for any humanity anywhere for this new disease, and it's airborne. So, don't breathe again, because that's very harmful. And it's silent but deadly. And that's what they say. It's harmful. There is no cure. So are you going to sleep better tonight that I shared this with you? But I do have some good news for you. All right. Their response from Johns Hopkins, because there is no sustained federal funding dedicated to this, we need more money, because money is always the answer. It's not the root of evil, but the love of money is the root of evil. But money is the answer, especially for those that want to line their pockets with it. Did you watch my videos about the sticky fingers of those felons in Hawaii and other places that are behind bars? Because that money just stuck to their fingers. Yeah, but get this. There is something called the Disease Act of 2023. This is a bill that was introduced. Well, there were two bills. There was one that was introduced into our House of Representatives, and there was one that was introduced in the Senate, and I'm speaking about Washington, D.C. Now, I'm going to tell you in a moment what's troubling to me on many levels, but of course, the United States can't be outdone and overshadowed by the WEF, so they had to come up with their own proposed laws for millions and millions and millions and probably millions of dollars in funding, just like Johns Hopkins said. And I'm sure Johns Hopkins will not get any of this money for studies or research or anything, will they? No, not at all. That's not why they're saying that more money should be provided by the federal government. No, not to go to Johns Hopkins and their researchers and scientists. No, don't connect the clots, friends. That's jumping to conclusions. But what they do want to do with these bills is they want to fund something called BARDA, BARDA, which stands for the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, which is a department of the Health and Human Services, because don't you know, we need more government. There are some people running for president right now that want more government. They want more government oversight. They want more regulation. They want regulatory agencies. They want more studies. And I don't. Okay, maybe that's just me, but I'm in favor of like limited government and personal choice and freedom. I know I'm a dinosaur. Did they exist? And probably. And I'm having a little too much fun here in this live stream. But here's my question. All right. Well, before I ask you the question, I'm going to read to you a summary of this Disease Act of 2023. And then I'm going to let you know who was a co-sponsor and why this should trouble you like it troubles me. All right. This legislation was introduced in June of 2023, so not quite a year ago. And remember, in our political form of government, ideas are introduced either in the House or the Senate in the form of a bill, which is a proposed law, proposed legislation. And ideally, that is published, and you can go online to see what bills have been introduced. But I will give you a vomit warning if you do that, because you would not believe, especially with the Democrats, how they are trying to suffocate and strangulate and strangle we the people. It's absolutely mind-boggling, but I do have some good news at the end. So this legislation then has to be discussed and then voted on, and if it's eventually passed, it goes to the president or whoever's in the White House occupying it to sign it into law. So presidents do not make laws. They sign a bill into law. And yes, they can influence the legislation by suggesting that these certain things be introduced. But just remember to read between the lines. No governor can make a law. No mayor can make a law. No grocery store clerk can make a law that affects you. All right, let's clear that up. No health officer can make a law. And by the way, no judges are supposed to make laws either. All right. This Disease X legislative action is supposed to create medical countermeasures. And I love what they have these acronyms, MCM. Well, in my neck of the woods, that stands for mid-century modern. It's a style of design that I personally like. And the reason I mention this, let me say that again, I personally like, the reason I mention this is because the bad guys, the evildoers, the puppet masters, the New World Disorder WEFers, they take these acronyms that we're familiar with. Maybe you're not familiar with it, but the general idea is they'll take something like BLM, which stands for Bureau of Land Management, but then they slap it on Black Lives Matter. And suddenly it's like, oh, I've heard of that before. This happens again and again and again. Even BARDA. Now, some of you may not have any association with that, but Bardo, B-A-R-D-O, for those who may follow Buddhism, has to do with that style of, I don't know if it's really a religion, but that philosophy. So I find it very interesting that a lot of these acronyms are being introduced. Anyway, Medical Countermeasures Program for Unknown Viral Threats with, I'm just going to say it, pandemic potential at the Biomedical Advanced Research Development Authority. Now, specifically, this is what the legislation would do. It would direct BARDA to accelerate and support advanced research, development, and procurement of countermeasures and products. That's the exact language, friends. We know what that means. Countermeasures and products to address disease X threats. It would allow Health and Human Services, this bloated department of the United States government, to award contracts and grants and cooperative agreements and enter into other transactions to promote the development of disease X medical countermeasures. Yes, that's where sticky fingers come to mind. Now, here is who is promoting this. All right, I just took this off the government website. Here we go. Guess who supports it? Johns Hopkins and the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, the Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technology. It goes on and on and on. And then there are several, you guessed it, biomedical and pharmaceutical companies that are supporting this. Of course. How about FluGen Incorporated, Biologic Incorporated, Virology, Biotechnology? It just goes on and on and on. All right. But guess who else supports this? And any of y'all who live in Texas ought to get in touch with your representative, Dan Crenshaw. Yes, Dan Crenshaw of Texas is actually a co-author of this bill. Is that okay? I guess it is, if you like him. So that's just what we need. More government intrusion. I'm sorry, protection and help for our personal health, because my personal health is of great interest to the government. And wouldn't you know it, even though disease X doesn't exist, a brand spanking new facility in the UK does exist. And they are, let me share. Here we go. I will share my screen and we'll hop right on over. I'm having way too much fun here. The UK, I'm going to reject the cookies. Here we go. The UK unveils VDEC, the Cocktail Development and Evaluation Center, to be at the forefront at the UK's ability to research and develop cocktails against the world's deadliest pathogens. And this came online basically last year. So what they say is, let's see, I can't find it at the moment, but it says, I had another headline that says they're going to be able to create these countermeasures in 100 days. Yeah, I just think it's amazing. It's like, very amazing. All right, I have some good news. With all the hogwash that's been sloshed all over us for these last several years, it is true that more and more people are waking up. And I know that they are because I've had many people over the years reach out to me and to my husband, Pastor David, for our help in getting a job without the jab, or keeping their job without getting the jab. But here's where it gets interesting. Some of these people already got one jab, already got a second jab. Some of them even got 3. And then they said, they want me to get another one and I'm not going to do it. Can you help me? So if these people that went along with it again and again and again, now are standing up and saying, I'm not going to do it anymore, that is evidence for me that people that actually went along with it are now putting down their foot and they're not going to go along with it. So I predict that the bad guys are not going to be able to get away with the same grand scale tyranny and oppression that they did in the beginning. And let me just go on record. Okay, I was oppressed. All right, I couldn't go swimming. Oh, boo-hoo. Some of you lost your jobs. Some of you lost family members because of what happened when they underwent the medical procedures. So there are those who paid the ultimate price. There are those that paid the ultimate price for complying. So what it boils down to is each of us making the choices that are right for us. You know, even all of the nonstop narratives that are in the news right now about the rising numbers and the overburdened hospitals, like people aren't even batting an eye that much anymore. My hubby was at a diner recently and he said, you're not going to believe it, but I heard these guys at the next table saying, I'm not going to do that nasal swab anymore. Like, I don't even think it's working. This is what they said. I don't even think it works. I'm not going to do that. And it's like people just out in the open saying that they're not going to participate anymore. So that is compelling to me. Now, there are people that have an undying love for the government telling them what to do. They are addicted to dread. They are addicted to fear. They are addicted to these diseases. It's like being, I don't know, at a football match or something, and they're cheering like, yes, let's go. Oh, did you hear? Did you get it? It's like, I don't know. It's strange to me. But it's not that strange. See, you probably can follow along this line of thinking. There are people that gave up so much for this narrative over the last few years. Some people like me, my jobs just went. The doors were shut. I was never invited back, never got another contract. It was over. There are some people that actually went ahead and did what the government told them to do. There are people that experienced great hardships. Some people lost their businesses because of government oppression, or maybe they went along with what the government told them to do, or maybe they kept their business open, but there were no customers because the customers were afraid to go. So for many reasons, many people have had losses. And to face the reality, how do I put this without triggering anything? To face the reality of what happened, what actually happened or didn't happen, is too much for them. They have to go along with it. They have to tell everybody that they got, that they're positive and that they had it and that they have it. Because to face the concept of that not being what it appears is too much. All the sacrifices, all the loss, they have to believe that what they were told was true. I think you can follow that line of thinking. So there are those who want the government to run their lives. They want the government to tell them what to do so they don't have to make those personal choices and they don't have to be responsible for themselves. My heart goes out. I actually have a great deal of compassion for people that are living that kind of shallow life where they want somebody else to tell them what to do. And they don't want to be responsible for their own choices. Here's the bottom line. Complying is always a choice. Always. You may say, or you may know people who said, I had to. Well, you had to because you didn't want the other result or the consequences of not doing it. Because for every person that you trot out to say they had to, my daughter had to keep her job, I'm going to show you a daughter who didn't and either lost the job or kept the job, but that's not even relevant. What's relevant is they made a choice for themselves and they accepted the consequences. I've told you the story about a woman who came to me for help too late. She worked in the medical field and she was adamant, I'm not doing it. She was a single mom of a 13-year-old, I think, 14-year-old. And she said, I'm a single mom. This is my livelihood. And she tried in her way. She didn't come for my help, so I don't know what she did. But it was for, one of these big hospitals, and they put her on unpaid leave. And she went back to work and got the cocktails. And a few weeks later, they fired her because her job was no longer, they were downsizing. So she went through all of that and she got fired anyway. Okay. If you're telling me you have to do this to keep a job, jobs are never secure, ever. So that is your choice. Own it. Grandparents said to me, you're much too strict here, Peggy. I had to because otherwise I wouldn't be able to see my grandchildren. Okay. You chose to see your grandchildren. Just acknowledge that you chose to do it. I'm not saying it was an easy choice. I'm not saying it was the right choice. Apparently it was the right choice for you. Just don't oppress me. All right. So complying is always a choice. As for me, hashtag never have, never will. And friends, the only way to push back against Davos, against Johns Hopkins, against Disease X, against the government is your own individual noncompliance, not some nationwide group. It's your own action. You don't get there through petitions and protest and marches. No movement, no group is going to do that for you. How many public appearances did I make with hundreds, maybe thousands of people? And I know because I saw as people were leaving to go back on their public transportation or wherever they were going with their suffocation device in their pocket, coming to a march for freedom. I have many stories about this. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not even saying most of them, but a portion of them. And you know what? That's their choice. Just don't be a hypocrite. And don't look for someone else out there, some petition, some declaration, some whatever to save you. It's you living in freedom and suffering. Yes, I'm using that word, the consequences, or embracing the consequences of your actions. I've got people that you know right here in the chat who have loved ones that paid the ultimate price with arrest and being manhandled and brutalized and thrown into jail for breathing. You think that's okay? It's not okay. And I, with my unobstructed God-given breath, will speak out against it. Because as you know, I'm marching this all the way to heaven. Thanks for being on board, friends. If you want to see my comments in a written format, get on that Substack, peggyhall.substack.com. Would you share this video? Would you share the Substack? Would you please take a moment and resubscribe and hit that little bell notification, because YouTube is unsubscribing my followers by the hundreds. And we need to upset the apple cart here for them. All right. Thanks for being on board, everybody. I appreciate you with your comments, your support, your savviness, and your snarkiness as well. All right. See you tomorrow with the next broadcast. And again, always over at peggyhall.substack.com.